Right. And since you mentioned that, wiring, right? How we're kind of hardwired and ingrained to believe these things that our society tells us we should believe. I had this topic about media and what we consumed while we were growing up, and that it comes from what we saw if we went to the theater, what we heard in music, TV, film. So, Eric, did you feel you had somebody who reflected you on any program you watched growing up, or did you have a role model or a fictional character that you just looked up to on TV?
I think, yes. I grew up in the 90s, so yeah. I loved Family Matters.
Yeah.
So Steve Urkel was my boy. Like, I love Steve Urkel. And Carlton, like Theo, like I'm just so grateful. But at the same time, I do recognize that growing up, especially in the 90s, there were examples of Family Matter. There was Steve Urkel, there was Carlton, there was Will Smith. There were these sitcom folks. But then there was New York Undercover. There was Cops.
Yes.
There was, so there were also real representations that, to me, the storytelling was you were either quirky and black and nobody really likes you, or you were dangerous and black and attractive and sexy, but you're gonna wind up in jail or in drugs.
Yep.
So those were like the extremes, and there wasn't much in between. With the onslaught of gangster rap in the 90s, all these things, there was a certain toughness facade that I felt like I was expected to keep up, and that wasn't who I was. I was a smiley kid. And then I will say, I think my family did a great job of ensuring that I didn't feel obligated to be tough or like hard and all that stuff, which was great. But then I would say, when I went to NYU, when we had like our showcase in front of an industry, I don't know if you all are familiar with the play Top Dog, Underdog, but and so some of you, a few of you. But there's a character Booth who's really like aggressive, to say the least. And I decided to do a monologue from Booth, and I was like, yeah, I'm angry, and I'm black, and I'm upset, and I'm a man. And I was like, and then reflecting, I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? And I was like, oh, I thought that would get me cast, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I didn't have to do that. That's not really who I walk around being, So in many ways, I was freed of the obligation to be one extreme or another, but in other ways, I still felt led to fit into that box at certain moments.
It's so interesting because listening to you all talk, it's like the role models and the people that South Asian communities growing up were modeling themselves off of were icons of black culture. And I mean, South Asians in general, like, were not allowed to immigrate to this country until the civil rights movement had passed, and it was because of all of you that that happened. I remember not wanting to make friends and not feeling connected to a lot of the Indians in my school growing up because they offensively kind of tried to pretend to be black. But it looking back, it was also that the role models available of anyone that looked darker skinned were in this country always black icons. And I think about that so often now because I feel like South Asians now are becoming more self-aware about that. Thank God, because it's taken a long time for people to just be like, okay, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about why, and let's talk about where that behavior comes from. And I think so much of what representation is and what is available now has to be attributed to the black community in this country and what has been endured and what has been fought for. And I think I think about Bollywood, first of all, which is very much like an arm of colonialism and of colorism. And all of the characters that were darker skinned in any Bollywood movie growing up, they were like the buffoon or the comic relief, or the villager that was uneducated, illiterate, really toxic stereotypes actually that have not gone away to this day. I mean, we see kind of what's going on right now, and it just, I think panels like this and conversations like this are the reason why they might change. Things might continue to change.
I think they're already on a great trajectory, because if you just think about, I don't know, 5 years ago, and somebody said people of color, you automatically thought black.
Yeah.
And nowadays, that's just simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about, when we talk about communities of color, we're talking about all marginalized communities. We're talking about so many different people, making sure that they're being represented. And what's beautiful is when I see us jumping on each other's bandwagons and really adding fuel to each other's fights. And I think about the Asian community, especially in music theater, represented on Broadway. And there was a study that came out, and it was so great to watch the community come together and say, hey, this isn't cool. Like, there should be more representation for all of these people, not just 3 versions of people of color, but all people of color should have some sort of representation. But it was
high school, I've always been the only black girl. College, the only black girl. And then even professionally, the only black girl. And it wasn't until we did Richard III, well, the African Company presents Richard III, which is for black people, that I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. It's just like, it takes its toll, man. Like, I'm kind of tired of it, because there's this sense of like, am I the token? Especially in this day and age. Like, we never know someone's intention, but sometimes I feel like this whole diversity can be like a trend. Like, we have to have at least one to make it seem like, oh, we're diverse. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, did you want me because I'm black, or did you want me because like, oh, this is the girl from the part? And I just feel like I'm in this space now, like, I'm just kind of tired of it. And everyone's feelings are valid, but to hear, like, I was literally listening to like this white girl complain, like I was the only non-person of color at this summer stock, and it was just, and I'm like, girl, Becky, welcome to my life. Girl, like, she's like,
good for that summer stock company.
Like, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but, and that was your one experience, but like, girl, like, look around you. And her feelings were very much valid, but like, so I mean, it's something I'm still trying to figure out.
Can you talk about, and I know this is hard, but can you talk about just what you did to deal with it, or how you processed that in the moment while you were in that rehearsal process?
Yeah, I was pissed. Like, I was like, should I, like, so the associate artistic director is a black man. So I was like, should I talk to him about this? Because it just made me feel a little uncomfortable. And I was like, should I talk to the director? And I was like, no, you know what? Let me just, so I just really been into Kelly and like some other friends, because I was like, is it me? Am I tripping? Like, why am I mad?
This was the show where you were
this?
the only person.
And so I was like, why am I upset about this? And so I was venting to them to see, like, is it me? Like, what's going on? And really, honestly, I just kind of just had to get over it, because I felt like I would be the bad person.
Right.
Yeah. Because I felt like no matter how much, even if I went to her and wrote out like a little script of like what I was gonna say to her and try to like use it as an educating moment, I would have been turned into the villain. Absolutely. No matter, so that's why I didn't say anything, and I just kind of was like.
Is it our responsibility to educate them? Eric, what do you think?
I have so many things to say. Get ready, guys! All right, that's me relieving myself of feeling obligated to solve it all. But whatever. It is not our obligation to educate. I truly believe black people can only heal with black people. They can only heal. We can only heal ourselves with each other. And it is the work of white people to educate each other. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that. And I think it's a common understanding, a commonality that should not be ostracized. It should be celebrated, that like individual communities have their individual experiences and need to be able to safely talk about those experiences and heal from them, and then go to the other community and say, hey, we're healed. What work are you doing? Mm-hmm. Because it is not our job to educate. Mm-hmm. All that. Plus, I do think a trailblazer is going to have the hardest time as opposed to someone that's following in the path of a trailblazer. So when you are the only one, you're always gonna have a harder time than the person that's like, I get to be the second one, you know what I mean? I get to be the third, you know. You're gonna have a harder time, and it is up to that individual, and I think there should never be any judgment attached. But it is up to that individual trailblazer, so the one person that's the only black person, to decide how much am I willing to take on, because you're gonna have to take on a lot.
Yeah.
And it is not an obligation, but it is something that I think honestly there need to be more conversations about, and more collective healing conversations about. I have multiple experiences which for me are compounded by the fact that I have a theater company that is all people of color, and we advocate and create and curate spaces for people of color. So I'm rarely the only person. When it's my space, I'm never the only black person or the only person of color. So it's ironic and frustrating when I get invited to do this show. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. And they're like, and then I get there and I'm the only. And then I recognize the things that you were talking about in terms of tokenism. It's like, oh wait, this character's not fleshed out.
Yeah.
This play takes place in 1960, and when I ask you, when I play it a certain way, because I understand the context of a black person being the only black person in 1960, it's like, oh no, he's more confident. He's assured of himself. Like, oh, so in this room full of white people during the civil rights era, he's confident. And so then I found that I had to do the work of being like, look, you know, because it was a workshop, so they were open to feedback, and you know, right, yeah. I mean, so it's like I did the little like, well, maybe, I don't know, and I had to be like, look, there is performance.
Yeah.
As a black person, you're performing. If it's 1960 and you're with a bunch of white people, you're performing, because you can't be your true. You're not your confident. There's layers of performance.
Yeah.
So for you to assume that this man is confident, fully himself in this room is like, no, you don't understand the experience.
Yeah.
So then that was the teaching that I felt I had to do. But then, honestly, I probably had a more difficult, I mean, you know, it's all relative, job than the other actors that could just come into a part and not have to explain or represent or defend the full humanity of a character that was meant, you know, that someone didn't understand because they just don't have the cultural experience.
Exactly.
And then if that play goes on to win a Pulitzer Prize because I did that workshop in, you know, whatever year, who knows if I'll get the recognition for my cultural contribution that is also associated with the historic oppression, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like,
It's a winding cycle
It is.
that you can't get out of.
Yeah, I think the thing that is so frustrating about that is, as an actor, that's not your job.
Right.
It's the job of, think about theater as a collaborative space. It's a place where people come together to create together. So if you're the director, if you're the writer, no matter what, everybody has an input to make this thing the final product. But we come to these situations when everybody that's putting their particular expertise into building this thing is white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's when we come to this issue, and it's the norm. It's the norm to show up at a lab or a reading or a workshop, and everybody on the creative team, except for maybe the choreographer, is white. And of course you're not going to have a flushed out character, because there's not one person on this team that's been able to say, hold up, this person that's the only black person in this whole show is shucking and jiving. Can we flush out this character and make them a person? But that's never going to happen until theater stops preaching about being more inclusive and starts actually getting more inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say right now, not that it's our responsibility, but what would you say right now if a theater company was asking you, what should we do? What can we do? What would you tell them?
Look at your staff. Look at your everybody that holds a position of leadership. Look at them, and if they're all white, then you need to ask yourself if you're actually trying to make a change or if you're just trying to look like you're making a change.
I love that you said that, because I'm going to Texas Shakespeare this summer, and I sent a screenshot of their staff to Kelly, And I was like, I'm scared. All old white men and like some white women. Not one person of color, not one on their staff. And I'm like, how is this in 2020? Like, how are we doing this?
How are we doing this? And it's just, and it's men too. Like where are the women? Where are the people of color? Like, where are the outside ideas? It's that I'm really kind of tired of the lip service from the industry about inclusion and people really almost scared to do the work of actually making the change they say they want to see.
Yeah.
And go ahead. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, you have to be suspicious of the language too. I mean, tolerant, inclusive, open. These are not words that are inherently positive in my experience. And you have to think about who's holding the space. Why are they holding a space for you? Is it a white space that's holding a space for you? In which case, you're not actually welcome. You are othering the space by being there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like also it's like you have to do the work, not us. We will always be doing the work. The burden will always be on us to be more educated than any white person in the room. I can do gymnastics going through queer theory, color theory, history of racism, colonialism, all of this shit. But in a room full of white people that have not also gone there in their personal journey and their study, it's impossible to hold an intelligent conversation. And I think education has a huge deal to do with it. It's not just the education we do for ourselves, but it's once you're out of school and once you're stopped, once someone is not feeding you what you need to know, what do you do on your own time to figure out how you take up space in this world and society? And I think,
What does that work look like? What does that work look like for somebody?
I would hope it looks like a genuine curiosity in why you might be picking up on microaggressions in the room. Maybe then that curiosity leads you to read a book. I don't know, to maybe search, I don't know that name, or I don't know where that comes from, so let me just quick Google search about that. I find that the fear behind some of that knowledge is so limiting that many of my colleagues that are white will not do that work, just because it is so terrifying to be like, I don't know. I mean, like, I used to act, I used to study acting, and I was on the path to try to pursue that more seriously. And I realized that I wanted to make my own work because it was unfulfilling to audition for things where I felt like either I was inserting myself in roles that were not necessarily made for me, without me in mind, and I had no interest in trying to fit into that. And then also, I might be taking away roles from other people. If there was a call that said Latino or like all ethnicities apply, I would. And sometimes the play would be talking about someone Iranian or someone from Colombia, or someone that actually could have been, a Colombian actor could have been auditioning for that. And, here I am trying to do that. So I think it's like that responsibility also, those like other gymnastics that you have to peel back some of those layers as well. But I feel like every space is a white space until we change that. And I feel like what flips it is, let's not be inclusive and have diversity look like an all white place with 2 people of color. Let's make it everyone is a person of color. Someone might be white passing, maybe no one's white, maybe that's not even there, and I really want to see that. I'm like thirsty for it, because it's not just in the acting world, it's in the art world, which some of my work goes into galleries, and I'm constantly applying to residencies that are all white judges in all white spaces. And then, I have to tailor my application to be using the language, obviously. But then in theater as well, in music as well, going to venues, then the man thing comes into play really hard. Especially, there's, that kind of blew it open.
So this seems like a big underlying reason of why we go and start to do our own work.
Yes.
And
Yes.
start on our own paths and our own
100%.
journeys. So, Deonta, can you tell me about your album, your album journey? So start with Love Essential. Start with that, and then your new one that you're working on. Love
I made my first album because there's a theater artist who is now a huge freaking deal, the illustrious Billy Porter, who made an album back in the early 2000s that showed me that there was a place for me. A black man who is gay, who loves Jesus. That album showed me, oh, I have a place in this world. And it's been one of my biggest inspirations for my whole life. So standing by, I'm a stand by at Aladdin. So standing by at Aladdin, I'm sitting around playing video games most of the time. And and I was like, I need to do something. This needs to be productive. So I did a concert at 54 Below, and it was my first experience creating something of my own. I've never been a writer. It's never really been my gift. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience creating. My entire career, I've been an interpreter of other people's words. So finding that creative inspiration in me was like a huge light bulb, and performing that show and then telling my story and seeing so many people actually connect with it was a feeling that I hadn't ever gotten out of theater, and I've devoted my entire life to it. So I just decided to do it again, and this time make an album. And we performed the show one time. If you know anything about live albums, it's a live album, sorry. If you know anything about live albums, they're usually recorded, like Billy Porter's album was recorded like 5 or 6 shows they recorded, and then put the best of, we did it one time. And so I had a crazy experience with that because I got my first round of mixes back from the guy who was mixing the album, and I hated everything I heard. I had a huge breakdown. I was like, I just wasted all these thousands of dollars. I've wasted, like I can't use any of this. And then, many friends talked me off the ledge, and I continued with it and released it anyway. And for the first 3 or 4 weeks, random people were messaging me. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. Were messaging me, thanking me for being honest about my life and about my experience. And they were saying, not even the music, it wasn't even just the music, because I put all of the stories that I told on the album, everything that I said to the audience, I put on the album. And that's the part people connected with, and it just reminded me of how powerful my voice is when I'm not relying on somebody else to hold space for me. Mm-hmm. When I listen to that little voice in my head to say, oh, that's a little scary, I shouldn't do that. And then you do it anyway, and you go for it anyway, and the impact that it can have. And there are just so many people that were really forthcoming with me about their experiences, and people that had dealt with loneliness and feeling disenfranchised in the world, and having to put on a brave face every day, and just all of these themes we explored on the album, and people really went there. So I'm doing it again. The new one explores, it's a concert we actually already performed once, so I'm already better off than I was last time. So we're performing it again at Birdland. Shameless plug, it's Monday, May 18th. If you want to come, it'll be really fun at Birdland. And this time I'm exploring, I feel like my entire career in the theater, I've been put in a box, especially vocally and musically, and I've just had some experiences lately that showed me that all of that classical music that I love, I can sing. Mm-hmm. All of that, all of the legit musical theater that I love, I can sing. All of the gospel music that I love, I can sing, and it all has a place in me, and it all lives in this same person. I'm the same voice. I don't have to shift and be something that I think people want me to be. I can sing from my truest core, and that it will connect with people. And the first show was a huge success, so we're gonna do it again, and we're gonna record this thing. It's gonna be fun.
It wasn't me. I was there. I was there for that first one, for that live recording. So, and I was going through some things.
All right.
I messaged you and I was like, that was really powerful, so thank you. You did do that last song again, all right? Didn't we record the last
We
one?
recorded the last two again, and if you ever feel so compelled to listen to the album, the last two are by far the highest two songs. Singing all over the rafters and squalling and all the all the things that people want to hear. And they came up to me after we did the whole concert. I'm ready to like go shut up, have a drink, like haven't drank in months because I've been preparing for the show. And the guy runs down from the sound booth and is talking to my music director right while we're like doing bows, and I was like, Lord Jesus, what happened? And he said, we have to record the last two songs again, and I was like, I don't know if I have it in me. But the good Lord showed up.
Hello.
Especially that second time.
We did kind of go to church a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
you
fine.
did.
It's fine.